Today, communities around the world are still fighting the devastating consequences of opioid addiction. But more than 180 years ago, an empire turned addiction into a weapon of profit. When China tried to stop the flow of opium, Britain didn't back down. It declared war. This is the story of how a drug trade reshaped history and left scars that can still be felt today. Long before the first British warship appeared on China's coast, the Qing dynasty stood among the wealthiest and most powerful empires on earth. Its cities bustled with merchants, its fields produced abundant harvests, and its craftsmen created porcelain, silk, and tea that Europeans desperately wanted. To many Chinese officials, their empire was largely self-sufficient, needing little from the outside world. Britain, however, had developed an insatiable appetite for Chinese goods. Afternoon tea had become a national obsession, while fine porcelain and silk symbolized wealth and prestige. There was just one problem. China accepted payment almost exclusively in silver and showed little interest in British manufactured goods. Ship after ship sailed east loaded with silver and returned carrying valuable cargo, draining Britain's reserves at an alarming rate. For the British Empire, this was more than an economic inconvenience. It was a growing crisis that demanded a solution. Before long, British merchants would discover a product capable of reversing the flow of silver forever. But its true cost would be measured not in coins, but in millions of lives. Britain's answer to its trade crisis did not come from a factory in London, but from vast poppy fields in British-controlled India. Under the powerful British East India Company, farmers were encouraged, and often pressured, to grow opium instead of food crops. The raw opium was processed into valuable cargo, packed into wooden chests, and shipped across the Bay of Bengal to the Chinese coast. Although the Qing government had outlawed the drug, a thriving smuggling network made the ban increasingly impossible to enforce. Foreign merchants anchored offshore, while Chinese traffickers quietly moved the opium inland under the cover of darkness. As addiction spread, silver that had once flowed into China began flowing back out to British traders. What had started as a solution to Britain's trade imbalance quickly evolved into one of the most profitable drug operations in history. Every shipment strengthened Britain's economy while quietly weakening China's, proving that an empire could be challenged without firing a single cannon. What began along China's southern coast soon spread deep into the empire. Opium was no longer confined to smugglers and wealthy merchants. Laborers, scholars, soldiers, government officials, and even members of the imperial court became dependent on the drug. Opium dens appeared in cities and villages alike, where hours disappeared in clouds of sweet-smelling smoke, while businesses slowed and responsibilities were abandoned. As addiction grew, so did corruption. Officials accepted bribes to ignore smugglers, local authorities looked the other way, and criminal networks flourished despite repeated bans from Beijing. The economic damage became impossible to ignore. Millions of ounces of silver poured out of China to pay for imported opium, weakening the nation's currency and placing enormous strain on ordinary families. The Qing government realized it was facing more than a public health crisis. The very foundations of the empire, its economy, military readiness, and public confidence were beginning to erode. China could no longer afford to wait. Someone had to stop the trade, no matter the cost. In 1839, the Daoguang Emperor appointed one of his most trusted officials, Lin Zexu, to end the opium trade once and for all. Known for his integrity and determination, Lin arrived in Canton with sweeping authority and wasted no time taking action. He ordered Chinese dealers arrested, demanded that foreign merchants surrender every chest of opium in their possession, and surrounded the foreign trading district until they complied. More than 20,000 chests of opium, worth millions at the time, were confiscated. Rather than selling or storing the drugs, Lin ordered them destroyed in full view of the public. Mixed with lime and salt water, the opium was dissolved and washed into the sea over several weeks. Before taking this extraordinary step, Lin also wrote a remarkable letter to Queen Victoria, asking how Britain could forbid opium at home while profiting from its sale abroad in China. The letter received no official reply. The destruction of the opium would soon become the spark that ignited a war neither side could avoid. Britain did not see the destruction of the opium as an act of justice. It saw it as an attack on British property, commerce, and national prestige. In late 1839, diplomatic tensions gave way to open conflict as the Royal Navy sailed toward China's coast. The result was a staggering mismatch. Britain's modern steam-powered warships, long-range naval guns, and disciplined military forces faced a Qing army still relying largely on outdated cannons, wooden junks, and weapons that had changed little over centuries. Coastal forts that had once protected the empire were bombarded from distances they could scarcely return fire. City after city fell as British forces captured key ports and controlled vital waterways. The war exposed how far industrial technology had transformed warfare and how vulnerable China had become after years of internal decline. What had begun as a dispute over an illegal drug trade had evolved into a conflict that would reshape the balance of power in Asia. For China, the greatest losses were still to come. By 1842, the Qing dynasty could no longer continue the fight. British forces had advanced along China's coastline, seized major ports, and threatened the vital city of Nanjing. Faced with overwhelming military pressure, China agreed to terms that would forever alter its relationship with the West. The Treaty of Nanking became the first of what Chinese historians now call the unequal treaties. China was forced to pay a massive indemnity, open 5 treaty ports to British trade, grant British citizens special legal protections under extraterritoriality through later agreements, and cede the island of Hong Kong to Britain. Although the treaty did not officially legalize opium, it shattered China's ability to control foreign commerce on its own terms. Across Europe, the agreement was celebrated as a triumph of trade and diplomacy. In China, it was remembered as the beginning of the Century of Humiliation, a period when foreign powers repeatedly exploited a weakened empire. Yet Britain believed its victory had not gone far enough, and another conflict was already on the horizon. Peace proved to be only an intermission. By the 1850s, Britain wanted even greater access to China's markets, while French leaders sought their own concessions after the killing of a Catholic missionary. In 1856, a dispute involving a Chinese-owned vessel known as the Arrow, which had been registered in Hong Kong, became the spark for the Second Opium War. Britain and France launched a joint military campaign, capturing Canton before pushing farther north. Their modern armies again overwhelmed Qing defenses. In 1860, Allied forces reached Beijing, and after negotiations collapsed, they looted and burned the magnificent old summer palace, destroying priceless works of art, libraries, and imperial treasures. The resulting treaties opened more ports, expanded foreign diplomatic rights, permitted Christian missionary activity, and ultimately led to the legalization of the opium trade. What had once been smuggled in secret was now protected by international agreements. For China, the cost was more than territory or treasure. It was another painful reminder that weakness invited demands, and those demands were enforced at gunpoint. The Opium Wars ended more than a century and a half ago, but their consequences still echo across the world. They reshaped global trade, accelerated the expansion of Western influence in Asia, and left China with a collective memory that continues to shape its relationship with foreign powers. Within China, the conflicts are remembered not simply as military defeats, but as a cautionary tale about exploitation, sovereignty, and the cost of national weakness. While today's opioid epidemic has very different causes and circumstances, it serves as a reminder that addictive substances can leave lasting scars on families, communities, and entire societies. The Opium Wars stand apart because addiction itself became part of an international struggle over commerce and power. History rarely divides neatly into heroes and villains, but it does reveal the consequences of decisions made in pursuit of profit and influence. Sometimes the most devastating weapons are not cannons or rifles, but commodities that quietly erode a nation from within. And those forgotten stories are exactly what keep the pages of the dusty ledger turning.